Well, welcome to another edition of AP's Profiles in Christian Living. My name is Mark Powell. I'm the convener for the National Journal of the Presbyterian Church of Australia, called AP. And my special guest with me today is the founding, well, I guess you'd maybe say manager, CEO, grand poobah of House of Refuge, Jodi Pickard. Jodi, welcome. It's great to have you.
Thank you, Mark. It's my absolute pleasure and honour to be here.
Now, Jodi, we're going to talk about what House of Refuge stands for in just a moment, and I think it's a wonderful organisation. But the first question I ask all my guests is, how did you yourself become a follower of Jesus?
Oh, that's a great question. It was in 2006, the 30th of July, in fact. There was a lead up to that, a big lead up in my life. I didn't grow up in a Christian home, but I had a Christian moral parents, and they so moral that they took my brother and I to Sunday school. So I did have some level of the Lord. I could at least recite the Lord's Prayer. But I had a moment in our life when my husband and I, our second child, he was stillborn at birth. And obviously that is one of the hardest things for anyone to deal with, holding their child lifeless. And obviously that sent us on a journey of searching. And I was obviously searching for peace and reconciliation. I knew he was in heaven. I knew that much, but I did question what that meant for me. Along that journey, I met 7 years into that, I met two Christian women, and things weren't going necessarily great in their lives, but the way that they were handling it just confounded me. I had no paradigm for understanding how they had so much peace in amongst their lives. So I actually was just drawn to spend a lot of time with them. I couldn't articulate it at the time, but obviously it was the Holy Spirit that I was desperately seeking that peace. So they started giving me books and all sorts of stuff like that. And then it culminated to a trip away in Queensland. And on Hayman Island, there were Christians. They preached the gospel, which was the first time that I'd actually ever heard that in its true form, and the invitation of what that meant. And my husband and I both gave our lives to the Lord. We were baptized on the same day in the bay of Hayman Island. We went to a service up in the little chapel, and we're so impacted by the power of the Holy Spirit. We say it often, we went away on that trip as two people and came back as two other people. And so that was the start of our new lives. And here we are today.
Wow,
Praise God.
amazing.
Yeah.
So you were truly born again.
Yeah, we were. Absolutely. There's
Um,
not one part of our lives that are not impacted by our decision. It's been, well, obviously the best decision of our lives.
yeah, I mean, it's a beautiful metaphor, isn't it? To become a Christian is to be born again.
Mhm.
And really, you've devoted, I think the Lord has really led you to defend the lives of unborn children.
Mm.
You've seen the tragedy of it in your own life. We've had the similar experience in ours with my wife. What led you to do this? And can you explain what this is?
Yeah, so fairly quickly, in fact, in the first 6 months, a Christian friend, our children were at a Christian school, a Lutheran school.
Hmm.
And so just a whole lot of what they were doing at school just suddenly started happening at home. So for them, in the ages that they were, they don't really remember life before them being so immersed in the church and Jesus. But one of the ladies at the school, she was volunteering at a pregnancy help centre here in Adelaide called Genesis Pregnancy Support. And she said to me, look, we're looking for volunteers to do the sex and relationship education into the high schools. You'd be awesome. And I'm like, what? Me? What am I going to say? What, don't do what I did? And she's like, yeah, exactly. And I'm like, oh, snap. Oh, what do I think about that? And so I said, let me think about it, pray about it. And then I went along and heard about what this program was. And it was another one of those days, Mark, of a significant day. I don't remember the date. I know the year. But the director went through the program with me. And I sat there literally with my jaw on my lap. I think I'd already decided within 10 minutes that I was in. I wish somebody had shared what she was saying to me as a teenager. And so I signed up on the spot. I went through all the training and became a presenter. And that opened up my world to the world of pregnancy support as well. I very quickly, within that year as well, I joined the board of Genesis. And so I was all in. It's a bit of my personality. And yeah.
I asked her, when you say you wish that somebody had told you what she was telling you when you
Mm.
were when you were young, what was it exactly that you wish people had told you?
Everything. We weren't told anything. We were left to our own devices, and that was just not a good thing. I think my parents felt as though, the maybe they were just redundant at that point in culture, that, we knew it all, we knew nothing. We knew absolutely nothing. We were learning off each other. It was disastrous. And that situation is still unfolding today. But then on top of that, you've got the impounding influence of social media, the internet. None of that was around when I was a teenager. We were just learning from each other and from other kids, which was disastrous enough. And we were all just wanting to be, accepted, loved, part of what was going on. And that led us into, dangerous situations, particularly around relationships.
Okay, so what exactly is House of Refuge Ministry, and how did it come to be in Australia?
So I'll try and give you the abridged version, but I've spent a lot of time in the US, which has been an incredible blessing. It started with me becoming chairman at Genesis Pregnancy Support. So 2 years, I was alternating as chair with our CEO, going over to the Heartbeat International conferences. And at the first one I went to in 2016, 17, let me think, 16, in Chicago, I heard keynote speakers, which was David and Jason Benham. Now, those guys captured me. Their genuine love of Jesus and their genuine love of people just flowed out of these guys. They were amazing. And so afterwards, I bought their books. They're entrepreneurial business guys now, but they had a life in professional baseball. That also captured my attention because our son had just gained a baseball scholarship in the US. So I was also trying to cipher these books over to him as well. But I started following them and listening to their podcast, and I learned about love life. And ironically, all of this all landed that our son was recruited into a college in Charlotte, North Carolina, and these guys were from Charlotte, North Carolina, of all places. So it was one of those God incidences, no doubt. And then on a visit there, it took a couple of years for me to work all this out with the Benhams, but it was 2019. I went on a visit to Love Life. I contacted them. They were delighted to hear from me, and went and met the founder, which is one of David and Jason's best friends. His name's Justin Reeder, and he started Love Life and in Charlotte, but now that's gone all over the US as well. And in amongst that, years later, 2022, fast forward another visit, I heard about their newest venture, which was that they had brought the House of Refuge ministry in through Love Life. And the story behind that's quite incredible. And it's important for people to understand because it's the same for Australia. One of the directors of Love Life, many of them are pastors themselves. He was working part-time for Love Life and also was a pastor of his own church. And this day he went into a pregnancy help centre, a local one that they were partnering with. And the director was really upset. And he said to her, what's going on? And she said, oh, sorry, you've just turned up at a bad time. I've just found out one of the girls we were supporting and counselling has actually gone on and had an abortion. She rejected our help. And she's the daughter of leadership of a big church and down the road. And he was like, excuse me, what did you just say, that she's a girl from a church? And this was outside of his paradigm. He had no understanding that this was going on. She said, absolutely, Josh, this is what's actually happening. We've actually had 3 this year from different churches. And then she showed him a study which came from CareNet. They're another big organisation in the US that have affiliate pregnancy help centres to them, about 1,200. And they did this big study and they found out that 40% of women and 50% of men at the time of their first abortion were attending church in the month prior. Now, Pastor Josh went away. He was so impacted by this. He said that it rocked his world. He went before the Lord. He was really upset and he was crying out to God, please let that not be in my church. Surely they know that, I work for Love Life. They know that we're here. And then as he was pondering that, he was even wondering whether that was going to be a barrier, because they knew, his congregation obviously knew how much they stood against abortion. But was he clearly articulating that they were there for people as well if they needed help?
Yeah.
And he knew that he couldn't actually say that confidently, that everyone knew that, knew his heart, knew the heart of the church and what they stood for. So he was the one who wrote the House of Refuge statement. And he initially wrote it just for his church, and he read it out in his church, and it was so impactful. I don't know if it was the first time that he read it out in the church, but fairly soon in him reading it out, because he would do it he was doing it 4 times a year. He did it every quarter. As a House of Refuge church, we recommend at least twice a year, just so that it's something that people can't miss along the way. But he had a young couple that the night before had found out they were pregnant, and they were attending his church. And she went to church the next day. He didn't, the dad, and no one knew, just them. He read that statement out, and she went up to him afterwards and confessed what was going on, was so grateful to know that she wasn't going to be rejected, that she was going to be supported. She was literally crying out to God, what should I do? I don't know that she was ever really abortion minded, but I don't think we can ever think anyone is not abortion vulnerable. And in Australia, I think we've actually got to a place now, Mark, that we have to say that every pregnancy, now that sounds crazy, but every pregnancy is abortion vulnerable because of what could unfold even along the way. And this is why it's so important that as Christians and as church leaders, we speak about this to give confidence to our people that we're going to be there for them and with them. And abortion is never the answer.
So the House of Refuge statement stands as being somewhat unique in, if I could put it like this, it's not just saying what you're against, but what you're for. So
Yeah.
not only are you against the death of the child, but you're for the mum.
Mhm.
And would that be a good way of summarising it?
It absolutely would. I don't know if you'd like me to share it.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'd love to hear it.
Let me just quickly get it on my phone. It is the cornerstone of the ministry. This statement is part of what needs to be in agreement to, so all the House of Refuge churches around Australia all agree and read the statement out. Where am I? Statement twice a year minimum. Twice a year is great. That's all it needs to be. Okay. So the church would say their name. So whatever your church name is a house of refuge, a place of refuge and safety for anyone dealing with an unplanned crisis pregnancy. Whether you're a member of this church, a visitor, or it's someone you know, we are here to help. If you find yourself in an unplanned pregnancy, please know that being pregnant is not a sin and the child you carry is not a punishment. This child is a blessing. God is creating this child in your womb. Whatever the circumstances that led to this pregnancy, we want you to know that you are loved, and we will do whatever it takes to help you carry and care for this precious child before and after birth. We would never encourage a woman to have an abortion because the child you carry is made in the image of God and is intrinsically valuable and loved by Him. You need to know how we will respond. Here is what we won't do. Please know that this church family will never gossip about you, shame you, or abandon you. This is a house of refuge, and we will not allow the family of God to harm one another with words or actions contrary to the love of God as revealed in the Bible. Here is what we will do. Please know that we will do everything in our power to remove whatever obstacles stand in the way of you having this child. There are people in this church ready to support and mentor you, connect you with resources inside and outside of our church. We will also encourage men to become great fathers who protect women and children. Finally, we know that there may be women and men here who were at a stage in their lives when they needed a house of refuge. You may now live with regret, maybe shame or heartache over a choice you made to terminate your pregnancy. You are not alone. There is refuge available for you as well. We can direct you to individuals who understand and can walk alongside you as you heal by either speaking with us, or you can confidentially contact Pregnancy Help Australia. And then we give the contact details, which is 1300 139 313, pregnancyhelpaustralia.org.au.
Okay, so the House of Refuge is not actually a literal house, but more a metaphorical support structure that the church brings. Is that correct?
That's correct. It could more accurately be described as people of refuge. You know, we are the church. We are God's refuge for everyone and each other first. First and foremost, I and the board of Love Australia, we strongly believe that this ministry is first and foremost for the church. That we are too, because of that study that from CareNet. Now, we could argue that we're not as Christian and our numbers won't be as high as that. But I personally, we've been involved now through House of Refuge of trying to help people, offering them help who were Christians, and we know they have still had abortions. So it is absolutely happening across Australia, and we really strongly believe that we can't expect to help the world if we can't first help ourselves. We need to make sure that no one who's a Christian ever turns to an abortion clinic as the answer and doesn't turn back to their church family. So and in amongst that, Mark, is the devastation of the last 56 years of legalised abortion in our nation. You know, we've now, in amongst this, we've got quite a few of the House of Refuge churches that have started post-abortion Bible studies. And some of the women are 30 to 40 years down the track. And at this stage, I don't know of anyone who's doing one for men. But we also have resources that are for men. And so this ministry is absolutely not a woman's only issue. For every post-abortive woman, there's a post-abortive dad.
Yeah, it's really great to hear you say that, because I think men tend to get lost in this issue, and it's staggering to me how the pain and the grief and the shame that men carry with this as well. So I'm really glad to hear you say that. I was talking to one of your directors recently, Anne Brown, and she made a really interesting point, not interesting, but like shocking, that when abortion sort of first came in the late 1960s, there were well over 400 adoptions every year. But by the early 1970s, that immediately dropped to one or two every year, which is just staggering to consider the impact that abortion has had, particularly not just on the couples, but on even childless couples that would have had the opportunity and the desire to adopt a young child. If churches are already, supporting a local pregnancy help centre, how is House of Refuge different? Like, isn't it just doubling up to do a House of Refuge? Because people might be listening to this and going, I love what you're doing, but we're already doing something. Is there something that House of Refuge brings that churches should be aware of and you'd encourage them to consider?
Very much. They're not mutually exclusive, Mark. They're both needed and it's essential. In fact, my church was already a supporter of Genesis pregnancy support. That's how my connection came, and we're also a House of Refuge. And there is a little bit of a crossover, but not really. A pregnancy, having been involved now on both sides of this, when I was a chairman at Genesis, for decades, we were always trying to, how can we let the church, the broad church, know that these services are available? They were not being utilised, and they still aren't as much as they could be. So it's getting that information out. But always a pregnancy help centre is short-term care. Also in Australia, our capacity as pregnancy help centres is very limited. We're working on a shoestring. It's all donated private funds that come in to support these organisations, and for the most part, they're mostly run by volunteers, just like Love Australia and House of Refuge. But it is only short-term care. It's the initial crisis, it's the counselling, the material assistance, and post-abortion support, all of those things. But when a woman is making a decision about her pregnancy, she, and hopefully the father, but maybe not, she is making a decision not based just on the short term. She is looking at, how am I going to be able to bring this child up? How am I going to support a child at school? How am I going to do a teenager? She can't even fathom this. She's got no support around her. And this is where the church is the only answer. We are the community that should wrap around her and do. This is a shout out to all the churches who already do all of this naturally. This is just being a little bit more intentional, just like what Pastor Josh did when he realized that he needed to, that statement just literally clears the air and almost puts us all on notice about how we're going to behave and how we're going to support somebody in this situation, whether it's inside the church or outside of the church. It also gives confidence to the people in your church. They're out in their lives, where they live, work, and play, and the relationships they have outside of the church, even their non-Christian friends, that if someone confided in them, that they have confidence to say, first and foremost, this is the most important thing, is to know that your response to your friend, your very response, can be the one thing that can either guide her across to continue, or keep her in that place where she is really vulnerable to take the option of the abortion. So being able to say, one, oh my gosh, I know that's super scary, but wow, you're carrying life. This is a miracle. Have a joy. We should always be, there is a joy in knowing that somebody is having a baby. And if a friend can offer that level of compassionate understanding, but also joy and hope in it, that can make a huge difference. So big difference is the short term to the long term care in what a church can offer, as opposed to a pregnancy help centre.
Yeah, it's interesting, as you've been talking, I've just been thinking, so often in the Psalms, the Lord is talked about as being a rock of refuge. And it seems that what House of Refuge is doing is reflecting the character and love and compassion of God, by connecting people in a moment of crisis to the people of God, which is a really beautiful thing. I guess my question is then, okay, I think it's an inspiring and wonderful thing to do, because it does reflect the character of God and provide real practical support. What's the process to become a House of Refuge church and be involved in this?
It's very simple. We try and make the bar so low there's nothing to climb over here, Mark. So there's basically two things that are at the base level, and if we can't achieve that straight away, we do have some other options. So first and foremost, you need to have your church leadership agree that they are going to read that statement from the pulpit twice a year. And there are some church settings that don't open that up, but there are ways that we can at least have that statement be known to the church. So even that is a negotiable thing, as long as everyone is hearing that statement.
Well, you could easily put it on the front of a bulletin or a notice
Mhm.
board or something
Yes.
like that as well. You don't necessarily have to have it said in the church, although I think that's a great thing.
Yeah, it's something very powerful when particularly the pastor reads it,
Mm.
uh, because if my church is a typical example, most people expect me to say things like this, because somehow it's my thing. Well, it's not. I never expected to be down this path, but I said yes to one thing and then the next and the next. But it's really powerful when it does come from the pastor, definitely. And also, many of the churches have got their statement up on the wall, like they've had it framed. At my church meets in a school, so we can't have access to that, but we've got a pull-up banner that's put up every week. So it's
Oh,
there for people to see, yeah, which is really powerful. So that's first is obviously the agreement to the statement. Second is that the church then appoints a representative, and that can be one person, it can be a couple of people, and then we've had churches who have announced this, and I've been at one church when they announced it. They had, out of a church of 60 people, had 25 people come forward wanting to be a part of it immediately. So we allowed them to all go through the training. And so we equip the rep with training, and it's all online, self-paced videos. If you sat through the whole thing from woe to go, it's about 3.5 hours. But you can chip away at it. 15-minute video is kind of the typical of the videos. And we would actually recommend not to rush through it, taking your time and, pondering through the information. And it's things like we go right the way back to making sure everyone understands our fetal development. Now, we think that we should all know that, but that's been taken out of our educational system. So, going through all the fetal development, to go through the abortion procedures. Now, that is a tough one, but it's essential. We need to be able to come at this from a place of being educated and not sensationalizing things. We use the Dr. Levatino videos. I don't know if you've ever seen those, but he does the best job at educating. He was an abortionist doctor who was convicted. The Lord literally took the scales off his eyes. He gives his small testimony in amongst it, and he stopped doing abortions, repented, and then he came back around into the pro-life world and actually started sharing. And the videos show all 4 different procedures, because there are 4 different procedures for the different gestational stages. Obviously, we recommend that people don't do that alone. It's best if you do it with somebody. You've got time to debrief. We say don't do it at night. You probably won't sleep. It's nothing, you won't see a live abortion. It's done with graphics and animation. But even that, Mark, is enough to. I didn't. We went through this each year as presenters. We would do our retraining just to refresh ourselves. Maybe not I think every 2 years we went through those because we just couldn't cope watching it every year. But it was important for us going into the high schools to be able to factually answer the children's questions. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, no, I remember when I myself, like your son, had a sporting scholarship to the United States, and I went to a Lutheran university in Southern California where I became a Christian. A whole other story. But
Wow.
I remember them saying there, yeah, it was a Missouri Synod, conservative, evangelical institution. It was excellent. And
Yeah.
one of our biology professors showed us actually an abortion, but a live one on
Whoa.
ultrasound, and it's never left me. It was both the best thing and the worst thing I've ever seen, because it was horrific. But from that moment on, I had no doubt that A, it was a human being, and B, this involved extraordinary suffering.
Yeah.
And I think too, I just wanted to, in any way I could, see this practice end. You mentioned before, earlier in the interview, um, when you were going to the States yourself and you were talking about the heartbeat bill. Um, can you sort of unpack that a little bit? Because that's actually been quite an important factor, hasn't it, in terms of influencing women about whether they proceed with an abortion, and when does the baby actually become a baby? When does that? So, for instance, if I can ask you a very specific question, at what stage in the mother's pregnancy do we actually hear and notice a heartbeat?
At 21 days after conception,
Mm,
the heart starts beating. So, and she doesn't even know she's pregnant at that stage.
mm,
So, when I said heartbeat, it was the Heartbeat International Conference that I was going to. But
mm,
heartbeat bills in America, when I started going to those conferences, that was in 2016. people were talking about the overturn of Roe at that stage in amongst those conferences. I had no paradigm for this. I honestly thought their faith was amazing, but I could not see how that was ever going to happen. And little did I know all of the things that had gone on behind the scenes for decades before that. So, just backing into that a little bit for Australia, we need to follow this example. So, at the time that Roe was overturned, America, for every one abortion clinic, there were 3 pregnancy help centres. That's how many pregnancy help centres are throughout the US. In Texas, I think it's like 9 to 1. They have a huge number compared to the abortion clinics. So we are way, way behind in this arena. And I don't feel as though the Lord can put the horse before the cart in this situation, because when abortion is overturned and you can't have an abortion, we're still going to have people having unplanned pregnancies. Just for round figures, when we were in the schools, we would the stats we ran with, which are reasonably accurate, broad, but half of all pregnancies are unplanned. And we would say that not on an abortion issue. This was just in a general way that, you might even know that about yourself, that you were the surprise to your parents. And many people around the room would be nodding their heads. Yeah, I was the surprise to mum and dad, that sort of thing. And then half of those pregnancies are aborted, is the round figures. It's staggering, the numbers. So this is why we are nowhere near in a place that we can support. If abortion stopped tomorrow in Australia, the pregnancy help centres would not be able to cope with the level of capacity they have to be able to actually really help. Now, this is where the House of Refuge, as far as I can see, is also a wonderful standing in the gap, because, it's going to take time for us to build our pregnancy help centres, more and more of them. And I think more of them will come actually even out of House of Refuge churches that are getting stronger and more passionate. I believe in every single church, the Lord has people already placed on their hearts very strongly this ministry. I've yet to go to a church or speak to any House of Refuge church that has not had people coming out of the woodwork saying, I've been praying for this for years. It's me. I know I want to be involved. And so back to the other question of what does this look like? Well, it's the pastor's agreement and the leadership's agreement to the statement, the rep being involved, but then it's building teams. So training people as mentors in particular. Mentors for those who are needing support with an unplanned pregnancy, who don't have supports around them. And, they can be that, mother figure, grandmother figure, father figure, grandpa figure, just a friend, that's where that mentor comes into it. And we do a lot of training around that as well.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Jodi. Every church I've been in, every church I know, people would literally give you the shirt off their back to
Yeah,
help
yeah,
in this kind of situation. They're just looking for a structure in
yes.
which to be involved to do it. I think it's wonderful. You say in Texas, there's 9 pregnancy support centers to every Planned Parenthood or, abortion clinic.
Yeah,
And what I think so beautiful about what you're doing is, House of Refuge is providing this grassroots movement where every church becomes, in effect, a practical pregnancy support center, right?
exactly. And we've got quite a few that are regional areas and don't have a pregnancy help centre. So part of the representative's role is to find out where are the supports outside of church. We're not expecting the church to be absolutely all and everything, that they can lean into the pregnancy help centres. But when there isn't one local, what else can we do here? So they are raising it up within themselves. If there is material needs that need to be met, they're putting the call out for it. People might have been finished with a cot, a pram, a baby bath, clothes, all of these things, they can be shared in amongst. We're so blessed in Australia. We have so many resources, and like you said, we are a very generous people when we know where it's going. We don't like giving to something that we don't know where the end result is. I think the Americans give much more freely without understanding exactly where something's going. I feel Australians, we like to know, is my money just going straight to paying someone's wage? And if it is, that might be necessary and fine. But is it exorbitant what this organisation is doing?
Yeah,
All of a
no, I
sudden,
totally
money. Yeah.
agree. I think that's what's beautiful about what you're doing is it's just so grassroots driven
Mm.
and local church led. Does
Yeah.
it cost anything for a local church to be involved in House of Refuge?
No, we don't charge anything. It's completely free. We do have some of the churches who then lean back in and do donate into us. Couple. We run on a shoestring, Mark. We welcome anyone's financial support. It's really important. But the Lord He's going to have His way with this. He already is. And it's amazing. We don't want there to be any barriers, and certainly money can be a barrier. And also churches thinking that, do we have to somehow join Love Australia, or do we have, are our people going to have to volunteer over there and we lose their support at church? It's none of that. It's all in-house. You do it within the context of your own church.
Mm. Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, it's amazing what you guys do because one of the most powerful videos I've ever seen, apart from the real abortion that I saw many years ago, was this beautifully crafted video that you guys produced, which just shows the emotional trauma in leading up to what everything that happens and how we can show the compassion of Jesus. How many refuge or House of Refuge churches are there in Australia and in the US as of today?
So currently in Australia, we've officially got 22,
Hmm.
and that's in 5 states. And that doesn't include Tasmania at this stage, although we are talking obviously with quite a few people in Tassie. And so those numbers are going to click up in Tasmania, which is going to be amazing. And so far, we don't have anyone in Victoria either or ACT. So they're the only other states but it's just a matter of time. It's just, we don't feel, the Lord is building this. This is His thing, and that it'll come as it comes. And in some ways, even for us, as we've been able to grow in our capacity to equip churches so well and find even better resources, all of this is really coming along super well. So 22. Having said that, I touched on the idea of something else if your church is not quite ready. We had quite a few people say in South Australia, because we've got 11 in South Australia. So the large majority at this stage is here because this is where we're based, and we've had relationships that have been building over many years, particularly through the Walk for Life, which is amazing. So that's no surprise, but the other states are starting to hear
I've got
about
to
it.
just got to say on this, South Australia, they are punching above their weight. What is it about South Australia leading the way on this issue? I mean, good on you, but it's a little bit of throwing shade on the eastern seaboard states, isn't it?
You know what? We've pondered it a lot, Mark, because it is quite remarkable. In fact, because other people have pointed this out to us, and we've realised that it is correct that the Love Adelaide Walk for Life is the largest event in Australia, and that's astounding to us because of all that what you just said. We've never seen ourselves, and you would probably feel the same being from Tasmania. We've
Mm.
always felt like we're not one of the big guys. We're just this, little state. But I think there's something in that we are more connected because we are smaller. And so that can work well or not well. And so when it starts to work well and the churches do come together, it does have that ability to bring
Mm.
unity, which we're seeing more and more. So anyway, we've had people come to us and take the idea to their church to come back and say, they're saying, they're not ready at this stage to become a house of refuge. I'm so upset. I think I'm going to have to leave. And
Mm.
we've said, please do not do that.
Mm.
Unless you feel really strongly that the Lord's saying, there's a reason to leave, don't leave over this. uh, stay. This is where your relationships are. This is where your connections are. And then it's just started with a couple of people that we personally knew, and we said to them, look, you can still do all the training and be equipped so that you can be ready in your church, that if there's a need, that you are there to be able to guide and support. And so they were really excited to do that. And then it's just started with a couple of people. Then we realized, why are we holding this back from anybody who wants to be equipped in this way? So we've now got about 30 people, I think it's the last count, that have been individually equipped as what we call individual House of Refuge representatives. And so they've done our training. They're still in their churches serving, loving, praying for their church. And they've also joined our community, so to speak. So once a month, we have a national Zoom call where there's further equipping. They come into that. We've got a national WhatsApp group, which they're all involved in that. And prayer requests are just coming through every week on that. We've had some really serious situations, but then the prayer is going out across the nation for those situations. So don't be upset if your church isn't quite ready, because one of our girls who did this right at the very beginning, she would have been equipped over 2 years ago. She did all of our training, and in 2 weeks' time, not just her church, but there's 4 campuses within this group of churches. All 4 churches are going to read the House of Refuge statement on Sunday, the 12th of October. So,
Fantastic.
yeah, she was never going to leave. She wasn't one of the ones who ever thought that, but her being there and being equipped has really helped her church to be able to eventually say yes to the whole House of Refuge ministry.
Yeah, look, I think what you're doing is wonderful. It's marvelous. If people want to know more, how can they get in touch with you or find out more about the organisation in general? Is it as simple as just Googling, House of Refuge, or where would you encourage them to go look?
Yes, the website is great. There's a lot of information on there. So it's houseofrefuge.org.au. You can contact through there. Go to the contact and it'll come straight into our email. We've got a few emails, but you can go info@houseofrefuge.org.au, and we'll collect all those emails and we'll respond quickly. We're always delighted to hear people reaching out, wanting information about how they can be more involved.
Yeah, fantastic. Look, one final question. If there's somebody out there, in the internet space at the moment listening to this, and they're at that point of real need and feeling the trauma of this decision, what would you say to that person right now?
You're not alone. Uh, you're not alone. There are people around you everywhere. Please just reach out. We're all here, and we will do everything and anything. Whatever the need is, we believe that we can meet your needs. Um, Australia is an incredibly abundant nation full of loving people. And we don't say this lightly, but this is a long-term support that we're offering. We're offering to get alongside you and your family to help, because this isn't just for this vulnerable family. This is for all of us.
Mm.
All families need to be brought up in a community for the health of our children. And so this is what's on offer is the community of God. And it also, just to know that for people who are offering this outside of the church, this does come with no strings attached. This doesn't mean that people have to join our churches. We will come alongside them outside of the church. Obviously, we're praying and believing for more than that, because this ministry is about all heartbeats being heaven bound, not just saving the physical life. This is about making sure that mum and dad and baby have eternal life. That's the call for all Christians, to live out the great commandment, to live out the great commission. This is the hands and feet of Jesus.
Yeah, fantastic. Look, it's so good, and I know that they're not empty words of what you're saying. You know, the whole heart of your ministry is to practically show the love of Christ and to those that are hurting and are at a real point of need. Jody, thanks so much for joining us today. It's been a real pleasure.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, may God richly bless you. I mean that with the utmost sincerity. What you're doing, and yeah, be really keen to talk about how we can involve more churches, particularly here in Tassie. It's time to
Yeah,
get started, I think. So
absolutely.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, this has been Mark Powell for AP's Profiles in Christian Living. I hope you've enjoyed this episode, and I look forward to seeing you next time.